What if the American dream isn't one dream at all? What if it depends on when and who you are? I'm Macy.
And I'm Taylor, and today we'll be interviewing three women from three different generations to discover whether historical conditions such as economic policy, gender norms, and social movements shaped women's ability to pursue the American dream in different decades of the U.S. history.
We understand that these interviews do not encompass how every woman has felt in their journey towards the American dream, and every story is different.
These are all Christian Southern women, so their views may vary compared to others. However, we hope to draw some insight into how America has impacted women, and we will be using their stories as our references.
Before we start, the definition we will be using for the American dream is one found from Britannica. We will be drawing back to this when referencing if these stories are examples of a successful American dream.
The definition we're using for the American dream is the ideal that the United States is a land of opportunity that allows the possibility of upward mobility, freedom, and equality for people of all classes who work hard and have the will to succeed.
Our first guest is Martha Nelson, but we call her Nana. She was born in 1939 and is the mother of two children, and she has worked many jobs throughout the years. Today we're going to be asking her some questions about what growing up was like for her.
Okay, so your first question is how did schools prepare girls differently than boys for the future?
Actually, I'm not sure there was a much difference between the way the boys or the girls were prepared because it was a small area, small community. There wasn't many jobs available. So most of the time, the boys and the girls had a choice if they could afford it or could get some help and go to college, they would have a teaching profession. If they didn't, the boys' alternative would have been to go in the coal mines, which was primarily what a lot of young fellows did in that day and time. For the girls, you could just assume that you're probably going to either be able to get an education yourself or have a secretarial job. In fact, I can remember as a child practicing being a secretary. So it was like that's what you had to look forward to. So really, a lot of girls, me included, made the choice to get married and be a housewife at the time.
Okay, so the next question is before laws like the Equal Pay Act 1936, how were women's wages and job opportunities discussed where you live?
Well, there wasn't a lot of discussion because it was cut and dried. You knew that there was a man's job, which would pay a certain dollar amount, and then there was a woman's job, which would pay a different wage amount, and I can assure you it would have been much less because that position would have been considered only a supplement to the real wage earner there. And who was the real wage earner? The husband and the father. That was just a given. And I would like to add, I don't know if you need this information, but as I was thinking back to it, I thought, you know what? Even though that happened in 1963, very little changed, especially in the professional field, for many years because it was very hard for an employee to be able to convince someone that her job was the same as the man's job. She was doing the exact same way because it was a man's world. And employers would use seniority or they would use the quality or the quantity of work, and they could get away with actually not paying the women the same as they did the men for the same job.
So, for our next question, we were wondering if women were expected to leave the workforce after marriage or pregnancy. Like, how common was that expectation?
Well, there wasn't much expectation. It was going to happen. If a girl came up pregnant, you just might as well get ready. You were losing your job because no such thing existed like a maternity leave at that point in time. And as far as saying, well, how about when you got married? In essence, it shouldn't have created the loss of jobs, but I think it may have contributed to it because an employer's mind was if she got married, the next thing's going to happen, she's going to have a family. If she's going to have a family, then I don't need to even think about promoting her or training her for some other job and knowing the day she gets pregnant, then she's going to be gone. So actually, it really did keep a lot of qualified females probably from not having the potential to advance in their workplace.
How did the GI Bill and post-World War II policies shape opportunities for men compared to women?
Well, at the beginning, for men, it created a great opportunity because, you know, you all are probably even aware of this yourself, that if you went into the armed services, then you got out, you took advantage of that veterans' finances that was available for you that would help to pay you through college, to go to college, or help you to buy a home or buy a farm to make a living. And of course, this later became available for the women too. Actually, which my husband, if he were here, he would love to tell this because he repeats it all the time. Because the biggest thing that happened with World War II was the fact that it created the necessity for women to go into the workforce and do jobs that men had originally been trained to do, because the men are all at war. All available men are at war. So the women had to do the jobs that had to be done in order to keep the war going. And so what happened? That's whenever it kind of became a two-person home. Man and woman both worked because they made a lot of money that way together. And it became a way of life, which we might say was a great thing, but in some cases, probably not a great thing for families.
Okay, do you think women could easily open bank accounts, buy homes, or manage finances independently?
No, they could not. Before 1974, a woman could not open a bank account. She could not obtain a mortgage on anything unless she had a cosigner. And incidentally, the cosigner, 99% of the time, had to be a male cosigner.
Before the women's liberation movement gained traction, did women openly question gender roles?
Yes, they did. Again, keep in mind that I was raised in a small community. I don't think we heard it or saw it that much, except all the news that you looked at, especially in the big cities. You were seeing women's lib marches, and demanding fair pay. But as far as me thinking about it, you got to understand, by that time, I was already at home with 2 children, raising them. I wasn't paying a lot of attention to women's lib.
Yeah. Looking back, how much did history, not individual choice, limit access to the American dream?
Probably a lot of limitations, even though I have to tell you girls, until you all handed me these questions, I didn't give a lot of thought to that. But when I think back to it, and in the area where I was raised, I don't think I realized that there was something other than making a home for my family that I really needed to do. But then suddenly, because of expenses, it became a necessity that I go to work. And I did. And when I did, I think that's when I realized that I really might be capable of attaining that American dream, regardless of the fact of my gender or of my lack of college or of the fact that I was just a country girl from a very small community. But I'm going to add this because as the years passed, I also realized about that American dream that at the beginning, that dream meant equality, justice, and democracy. But it has come to mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. In fact, some people would equate it to being healthy, wealthy, and wise. Some people equate it to being wealthy and having a lot of power. As the years have passed, that dream became a reality to me because as I realized that if I attained my full potential and did everything I could to help make it a better world, then I was making it a better world for my children and those coming after me in their life. So, and I do want to add this because, like I said, until I looked at all this, I didn't really give a lot of thought that many of those acts, like the Equality Act and the other acts that have passed, many of those progressive things that we talked about has made it possible for me to excel in the work that I did and eventually have a management job for some 30 years that would have normally have been a man's job. And it made it possible for me to have a much better home and provide a much richer type life. Not rich, but richer type life for my children. So I look back and I don't think I was thankful enough for those things.
Next, we'll be interviewing Mary Nelson, also known as Mimi, and she was born in 1968 and works as a preacher at the local church. And so we're so excited to get to know about her life.
Our first question is, did expanded access to education change what women believe they could achieve?
Well, thanks for pointing out that I was born in 1968. That was really an important time in history because I was 4
Yeah.
when that came about. So I was really kind of the first generation to really step into that. I do believe it changed, and not that you can do this, but maybe I can do more. Maybe I can be more than my mom and my grandmother and achieve more than they did.
How did Title IX affect girls' access to education or sports during your youth?
I played sports. Again, I stepped in with that. I had a sister who was 18 years older than I. She didn't play sports. I had another sister who was 9 years older than me. She didn't play sports. And I didn't realize at the time that I was doing something that they didn't. So it was really a neat thing when I look back and think the access that I had. Girls sports still are so undervalued. But Title IX did push us forward.
Do you feel like most of the girls, they wanted to cheer or do more things that were considered more feminine, or you feel like, or you
I
at
think
least?
that was expected. I think that was, I do believe, even, I know you just spoke with Nana, she was a cheerleader. Cute. You need to see a picture. But yeah, I think that's the homecoming queen and that kind of stuff. It was a man's world, like she said. That's straight up it.
After the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, did women experience more financial independence?
I did. Again, I came in during that time. I was 18 and got my first credit card. I had the first of many. But again, I didn't realize at the time that I rode in on the backs of those women that brought us to this point.
Okay, was having a family something you prioritized in life?
Absolutely. That's my greatest achievement. Raising my children and looking to see how they can achieve more, and then raising their children where they can achieve more is my greatest joy.
Do you think that the economy allowed you to balance working while also raising children?
When my children were before school age, no. I needed to be home with them, and you couldn't afford necessarily daycare or a babysitter. Or when they got into school, then I could step in and do more things, and the economy really.
Was supporting 6 children hard to manage at times with the cost of living?
My kids ate a lot of ramen noodles. uh, and the dollar menu at McDonald's was a lifesaver on ball game days because my boys played ball and the girls cheered or danced, and we were in a hurry. My husband and I both worked, so the dollar menu saved us many nights. Now your Nana will tell you that she set the crock pot in the morning before she went to her management job, and they had a hot meal. My kids did not have the hot meal.
They turned out okay.
They turned out okay. They didn't die.
Were men and women still treated differently at work despite legal equality?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's still times that, I mean, the pay gap is still here. The pay gap is still here, 50 years later. Um, yeah. I mean, absolutely. You can go into a car lot and, I mean, just look at that. They're not going to, you want to go to talk to a man about a car. You don't want to talk to a woman about a car. Just those many different things. Female doctors, you're leaving kind of even that you're questioning because a man is supposed to be more intelligent than a woman.
Do you feel like because you're a woman preacher, you've ever kind of faced scrutiny about that or people
Oh,
questioning you?
sure. That's taboo. That's very big.
Do you think that's ever discouraged you, or do you think that you've been pretty confident in your abilities to continue?
Oh no, it's discouraged me a lot. And but it's not just about trying to bring people to Jesus. It's continuing a legacy that my husband had started, and that we had worked together to build. So but pointing people to Jesus, anybody can do that, whether they're a pastor or not. Every generation has its own challenges and opportunities, and our hope is that the next generation goes beyond us and just leaves us in the dust. That's just one thing that I hope you guys can just see where you've come from someday, and then your kids and their kids. So each generation can do more.
Last but not least, this is our Aunt B, Bethany Ferrantino. She works at a church handling media. She is 29 years old and is going to give us a look into the idea of the modern American dream.
So, by your generation, legal equality existed. Did opportunity feel equal?
So when I read this question, I had to automatically just kind of put a lens on it because I grew up in a small town, and I think that like where you grow up, that environment definitely has an impact on anything in life. And so I definitely think growing up, there was equal opportunity with a lot of things, but a lot of it was still very much who you know. And I think that now more than ever, that's like pertinent in today's society of like who you know matters. And I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family that people knew and had, for the most part, a pretty good name around town. And so I think that helped me. Um, but I've seen it from different lenses. And like for my husband, that wasn't the same because he was from out of state. And so when he moved here, he felt like his opportunity was less than until marrying into our family, and he felt like not necessarily that like boosted him, but I think it gave him a confidence of like I know people and I can find success. So I think in bigger cities it was very much more male versus female equality, or just kind of how you grew up. um, but I think the goal at my age was for there to be full transparent equality, and I kind of think that that was wishful hoping, like they were just hoping for the best, but it didn't always turn out that way.
Do you feel economic systems today reward hard work fairly?
No. um, and so I think that again, I just grew up in such a transformative generation, and so there we're going to get into more college later, but like we were raised that careers matter. And as they were telling us this in school, we were seeing it proven false in society. And so I grew up very much in the influencer era of people that were 12 and 13 years old becoming billionaires overnight with no little to no education. And so I think that that expectation kind of fell flat because they were trying to teach us one thing while the economy was just booming with people getting rich quick.
Were you taught that like an overall education guaranteed your success?
100%. Yes. Um, I remember I remember feeling a shift in my education. And so um, when I was younger, I learned some practical things like how to write a check, how to fill out a check. But then by the time I made it to middle school, those practical things didn't matter. And all that mattered was how I tested. And to the point that in high school, I was actually in a class for principles of teaching, debating whether or not I wanted to be a teacher. And I had a person of influence look at me and say, if you actually enjoy teaching, this is not the field for you, because she had been a teacher for so long and she felt like her job had been dwindled down to nothing and all that mattered was what was on paper.
I mean, I think we could feel the same way about that. Like, so much is just built around our testing, and like, it's not even about like what we're even know or learning. It's just solely based on how we test and what those grades are.
Yeah.
How did rising college costs influence your ability to pursue the American dream?
So I definitely think that like the definition of the American dream is not what it used to be. And like when the American dream was coined, it was equal opportunity for everybody, to have all the same advances in life. We didn't even get to see that be successful before the definition of the American dream shifted, in my opinion. And so, again, referencing influencer culture, I can remember when I graduated high school, YouTube was a huge thing, and people were getting rich quick while we're also being told, hey, college, college, college. And so, all of these people are seeing success. I'm also still living in a small town, and quite frankly, my my family was large. My parents couldn't afford to send all of us to college, and so I wasn't even confident enough in what I wanted to do or be when I went to college that it resulted in debt. Like I had student loans with no degree because college was so pushed and it was so expensive. And so it was like, what was it worth? Like to take out the loan. I remember having a teacher tell me that, like telling me that it was worth going into debt to have a degree.
I just had a teacher tell me that, saying like you have time to pay them back, so you should just go, and pretty much saying that the experience was worth the money almost. And it just kind of made me think, are we to a point where college is more about like, I don't want to miss out on what everyone else is doing compared to, do I really want to do this with my life, or do I just feel like I have no other options?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely what college has resulted in. And actually, like, um, my brother was making a really big life decision a couple of years ago. He had gone to college to be a teacher and thought that this was his purpose in life and was presented this opportunity to leave the education field. And he called me and we talked about it, and we just kind of had this epiphany of how many people, and he and I have an 8-year age gap, and how many people went to college that we grew up with that aren't using their degrees. And so like, yeah, I went to college, didn't get the degree, but one of my best friends works with me and she went to college. She's no longer using her degree. People are pushed into these careers that at 18, you're not ready to say, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I definitely wasn't. And I think we're seeing the results of that because we were so college driven. I'll even go as far to say that I have some people that were really intelligent that I went to school with that knew exactly what they wanted to be and what they wanted to do, and they physically couldn't do the job that they received education for. So, book smarts didn't matter, test scores didn't matter because the practical skills weren't there.
Was owning a home something you wanted or aimed for in your life?
Absolutely. I think um, you think about purchasing a home and you automatically just see the pictures of people that have bought their first home or saved up, I definitely don't think I was prepared for it. Like, I remember getting to college and having a final about the the market and buying homes, and feeling like I was so uneducated when it came to buying a house. And also, I thought that when people bought $200,000 houses, they had $200,000. Like, I didn't realize, because it was such an achievement, or portrayed as such an achievement, that it was like, I finally did it. And so, yes, I wanted to buy a house, but for me, it wasn't like the American dream is for me to buy a house. For me, it was, I don't want to throw my money away in rent. Um, so that's why I wanted to buy a home. However, I will say, I think now more than ever, it's not as achievable, or it's harder to achieve home ownership, because the market is crazy. And we were talking a little bit before this, and if I didn't have a dual income house, I wouldn't have been able to purchase a home on my own.
Do you feel like delayed home ownership changed what success means?
No, I don't. I do feel like I'm an anomaly, because I owned a house by the time I was 22, which is not normal. I definitely chalk that, like, I'm still viewing that through a home, like a small town lens of, it's much more attainable in a small town as opposed to going to a city where prices of homes are skyrocketed. Even just in a 90-mile radius, my sister and I purchased homes within a couple square feet of each other, and it was a $300,000 difference in price. And so I think that's something to consider, of like, it took her much longer to obtain that house in a more thriving city than it did for me in a small town. And I definitely can see that, like, people that live in bigger cities, when they know that I'm 29, I'm on my second house that I've owned. It's a privilege. Um, but again, it just goes back to also having a dual income, because I definitely, in ministry, I could not afford it on my own.
You kind of hinted at this already, but do you feel like the American dream is still a goal, or has it been redefined? And if it has, what would you consider it to be now?
I think the American dream has definitely been redefined. I think now more than ever, we have a tendency to idolize money, and we feel like that is the American dream. Um, that's what you see with influencers, TikTokers, even famous people. It's like they don't even know how to be content with what they have. And I think you'll see a difference in that across beliefs as well. I think that as a believer, the Lord has definitely just instilled in me a desire for contentment, because if you're constantly chasing the next thing and what you feel like is your interpretation of the American dream, you'll never rest. You'll never be fulfilled. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to have that peace that, comes from the Lord, that I can just say, I'm pleased with my life.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that's a thing for our generation of how like everything is moving so fast and you're always wanting something new, where maybe older generations felt like they had finally like reached a goal and they could stay content with it. And
Yeah.
now, because almost you can see everyone's lives, you always have something to compare to, and like, I want that now, I need this now.
Yeah.
And I think it definitely is added to always feeling like you're one step behind and like you've never actually reached fulfillment.
Yeah. There's no end.
Yeah.
There's no finish line these days. People are constantly wanting more until they fall.
So I will be honest, when I read the questions, I knew of Title IX, but I refreshed myself on what it was. You do right away when I brought it up, what it was.
And I've never heard of it.
And she's never heard of it. So I refreshed myself, and we were talking earlier even about basketball, and I think we've talked before.
That's the primary reason that I knew exactly what it was. Because it
Because-
was supposed to be created the equality for women playing basketball, just equal to the men.
Right.
But it never did.
No, it never did. It still has not, even with the WNBA. Nobody watched the WNBA before Caitlin Clark. I mean, really, truly. She has made the WNBA a name. And for most people, Bethany
and increase their wages.
and increase their wages. I mean, they had, I don't even remember how much they made before that, but the guys signed on for millions of dollars, and they were yeah,
now.
they weren't even 100,000, but now they're filling stadiums because
Yeah.
of her. So she's even gone a step further in closing the pay gap. She's nowhere near, but then I did have to review. I did have to review what that meant, but I think it was funny that she didn't have any.
I did, yeah. Amazing.
Didn't know what it was.
And I'm sure it was covered in school.
Oh yeah,
I didn't
it was
retain
a
it.
big deal at the time.
Well, I was
it came
4.
in.
I was 4 or 6, 72 or 74. I think 74.
I don't remember
I don't,
exactly.
but so I grew up in it, and that's why maybe they didn't talk about it as much or whatever. But I don't know.
You know, I had a thought about the American dream that I didn't say, and I'd love to get y'all's take on it, because I think I shared that I thought the American dream had shifted, but I also think there's almost an aversion to it in my generation. Like, people go out of their way to not fit in that box of the American dream, almost like it's an insult if you assume. Because you all were talking about just the way that you were raised and that you got married and you had children, and there are people my age that are like, don't assume I want kids. Don't assume I want to be married. You know, and they fight to live outside of that box. Does that like blow y'all's mind? Or
Well, I mean, but it's a fact.
Yeah.
It's a fact. Yeah. I just said that when you just use the phrase the American dream, I just think it means so many different things to so many different people. Whenever the bottom line is, if you live up to your potential and accomplish what God gives you in front of you and blesses you with, then, in my opinion, you've attained the American dream, you know.
it's good.
When I think of the American dream, I think of, yes, everything we've talked about, but I think of my grandfather who came over from Germany, and he had opportunities that he didn't have there. And I had joked because I was trying to learn German and it did not roll off my tongue, and so I just said, I'm done. I'm not learning anymore. My uncle, my dad's brother, said when they came here, my uncle refused to speak German in the house because he was in America. He spoke English. And he took pride in that. And I think that's what this generation has lost, the pride of being an American, to understand not even politics, not even about politics, but they don't realize how amazing this country truly is and how much freedom we have.
Yeah.
That if you're this way in another country, you're not going to live. You know, we have so many gifts here and benefits and blessings in this nation that other countries don't have. And to me, that's the American dream, is to
Yeah.
grab hold of those things.
And you would be hard up to find anybody who has gone and lived in other countries that don't come back with that same attitude. Is people in America don't realize how blessed they are. You know, practically anybody you ever talk to that's lived away, they say, oh my goodness, you know, it just, there's
Yeah.
no comparison.
Well, even down to, I mean, that we talked about how we're all women of faith, obviously, and just the fact that, like, you can't even be believers
No.
all over the world. Like,
That's right.
it's such a privilege.
Exactly.
So we are blessed to live in this nation.
Yeah.
As each generation spoke, you can see how more and more opportunity was offered to each woman. Each were able to pave out a successful life for themselves, even if they looked a bit different. From each story, though, you can better understand how the surrounding world largely dictated the life each woman had.
The American dream has meant something different for women in every generation. Shaped by the laws, economic realities, and social movements of time rather than by hard work alone, the American dream is often framed as universally attainable. Women's experiences across different decades reveal that historical forces such as labor policies, educational access, and gender norms played a decisive role in determining who could realistically pursue that dream.
The work women have done throughout the years has slowly made the idea of the American dream equal for all. But now, is it even a focus?
Generations are constantly changing, but it's nice to look back and realize how far we've come.
Bam.
Goodness gracious, that's over.
That's cute.